Homeschooling is back in session, soccer is taking over several nights a week, and somehow dinner still needs to happen every night. This is one of those seasons where there simply aren't enough hours in the day. But instead of giving up the homemade foods and pantry staples that save us money, I'm finding ways to work them into the busy days. So today I'm taking you along for a few days of real homemaking, from making and canning bone broth to using fresh milled flour, 3 different ways for more nutritious homemade meals while still getting everything else done. Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sarah. I'm a registered nurse turned homemaker and homesteader, and right now I'm homeschooling 4 of my 5 kiddos. Here I am going to be sharing practical ways we're making homemade living work for our busy family while saving money and making the most of what we have. So one of the easiest ways that I have found to save money and prepare for the week ahead is by making homemade bone broth. Throughout the month, I save all different kinds of bones, particularly chicken bones, in the freezer, and also some of the vegetable scraps like the carrot and onion and garlic ends and things along those lines, and even some of the spent herbs from the garden. And I like to roast them, and you saw me put some apple cider vinegar on them. And I will roast them for several hours until I remember that they are roasting because I smell them. And then I will go ahead and add in the water and, like I had mentioned, the frozen food scraps. This is a huge saver. I don't show you in this video, but I actually use these same bones and even the veggie scraps and herbs 3 times. I did it once here in this roaster overnight, and then I did it twice more in the Instant Pot, and I got so much delicious bone broth. I was actually even able to have a friend over and help teach her how to pressure can. So this is just the first batch. It is absolutely beautiful in color. And considering how much broth that I got out of this, absolutely astonishes me. So with that roaster, I actually got 2 canning rounds. So I believe I got a total of 13 quart jars. And then, like I said, I did 2 more rounds of the Instant Pot, and I put those into the refrigerator to use within the next week or two because we use it so much with our soups, our pastas, our rice for sure. So anything you name it, it will get used really, really fast. Obviously, another thing is by making your own bread. There are so many different ways to do this, especially nowadays. And I find that incorporating sourdough can be a little tricky for my life. So I am trying to get back in the swing of things on this morning by starting it super early, even with some what I would consider discard. As you can see, it was very, very thin, and I went ahead and used it, and it still came out beautifully. And I am just going to also be doing some fresh ground flour. I'm going to be using hard red and hard white. I am just measuring out 100 grams of the berries, and I am just going to go ahead and grind them straight into the liquid portion of this, which I have already started. I did 200 grams of the sourdough starter, 750 grams of water, 60 grams of honey, 100 grams of oil, and 18 grams of salt. This does create 2 loaves, so if you only want one, please have this recipe, and it is a very forgiving recipe. I absolutely love doing sourdough with fresh ground flour because it gives it time to actually form those gluten strands that you want when you're making bread. So instead of letting it absorb the liquid for 15 minutes on normal recipes, doing it with the sourdough, you get such a better outcome, in my opinion. I am doing this pretty early in the morning, by the way. I have already fed my children their breakfast, which was a sourdough Dutch baby pancake. You can kind of still see it there on the skillet. So I am just now getting around to making myself breakfast. I am really trying not to eat carbs and sugar and all those types of things. So this is my typical breakfast, and I personally find it very filling, but I know not everyone likes eggs. I'm actually the only person in the house that eats eggs. I'm sharing this to hopefully encourage you to eat what is going to make you feel good and to also what your children are going to be eating. And I know that can be complicated, but I do find that this only takes me maybe an extra 10, maybe 15 minutes of my day, and I feel better from it rather than eating all of the extra carbs and sugar that my children crave and actually can use in their growing bodies at this point of their life. My body does not appreciate it anymore. So I don't want to punish my children for something that my body is choosing to do in my midlife like this. And so, with that said, I am done with homeschool for the day. At this point, I am kind of starting to prepare for dinner, and I'm going to be making this cast iron skillet bread for the first time. It is in the Prairie Homestead cookbook, and I will link it down below for you. It came out really well, but it was a little bit more hands-on than I had anticipated. So keep that in mind if you do decide to do this recipe. And I am really shocked I did not kill the yeast. As you can see, my kettle got a little warm and I was still using it for the yeast, but it did happen. It did work out. For this recipe, it called for some dried thyme. I don't actually have any dried thyme, and that is because I am growing so much of it in my backyard. So I just popped out to the garden real quick and grabbed a few sprigs of it, and it came out nice, of course, because who doesn't love the smell of fresh herbs? This recipe called for the thyme and rosemary, and if I was to make this recipe again, I would probably just do Italian seasoning, kind of make it like I do with my pizza dough, because I felt like it just needed a little bit more oomph. And that you saw that I put a huge tablespoon of powdered rosemary in there, and I feel like it just needed a tad bit more. But that was just going by smell, because again, I'm not actually eating this. My kids are, and they did love it. This Parmesan cheese, I probably should have added more to it as well. I did have some left over at the end when I'm sprinkling it on top. This is a yeasted bread, and I am going to be letting this sit for about 15 minutes or so. You could really let it go a little bit longer than that, just to make sure, like I had mentioned earlier, that the gluten strands are going to form and that you will get a good rise out of your bread. This is a double rise bread recipe. I am going to be putting it into a bowl after the machine is done kneading it for me, and I will then be putting it into the skillet. So it's not just going directly in there. So it does have a little bit more time to rise, thankfully, because it still really wasn't very formed even after that mixing. I probably should have let it sit a little bit longer, and it is still a very, very sticky bread. Doing things this way is how I save money in the kitchen. We are a family of seven, like I have mentioned before, and making our own bread products and having just the basic pantry staples always on hand at home is really a great way to save money. If I was to have gone out and bought something even close to this, including the quality, it probably would have been more than $20. And this, I have not done the math on it, was probably pennies to that because I was buying everything in bulk. The other thing that I like to buy a lot of when I see things on sale are large cuts of meat because you can cook them once and you can have several different meals from them. On this day, I am taking one of the tri-tips that I have bought in recently, and I'm just using up some of the different spices that I had in the pantry. This is a bourbon steak seasoning from Costco, and then I'm just doing some salt and some garlic powder, and I had already put the oil in there to warm up after I turned the Instant Pot on its saute function. Now, if you saute your meat on the outside first before actually cooking it, it's going to help preserve the juiciness of that meat. On this day, I definitely should have done it a little bit longer on both sides, not much. I didn't quite get the crusting that I wanted, but it still came out really, really delicious. Once I had flipped over the tri-tip, I am adding a little bit of water into the bottom of the Instant Pot just because I don't want it to yell at me and tell me that it burned, and it came out fine, of course. With this cast iron skillet bread, it has now risen again, so I'm just going to go ahead and drizzle it with the olive oil, and then I'm going to be cutting a big X on top of it, followed by some of that Parmesan cheese again. And I think that it would be delicious to even add like a garlic salt on top of it, kind of more like a focaccia bread. That's what my kids said it really reminded them of, was a boring focaccia bread because it didn't have any of the veggies on it. So while that is baking in the oven, I'm going to run out to the garden again to see what is left on my green beans. They have started to get really heavily eaten by some of the pests because it's been hot in the middle of summer, of course, here. And I need to pull them out and plant a succession planting any day now that I get a moment. I got a little bit and I did already have some on my counter, so I will be showing you how I'm preparing that for dinner shortly. But while all of that is going on, I'm going to take this now risen sourdough bread and I'm going to shape it into these oval bannetons. This dough was so light and fluffy. It was really hard to actually work with for some reason, but it came out nice in the end. And I did put these directly into the refrigerator for several hours. And I do show you that I am baking these later on tonight just to kind of get them out of the way. This is a Monday that I'm doing all of this for the week. And Tuesdays are very busy for us around here. So I didn't even want to have to consider baking these the next day. So I just went ahead and put them into the fridge for several hours to start to retard. As you can see, there are some really nice air bubbles already forming in it, which I don't usually get something that light and fluffy when I'm using fresh ground flour, to be honest. So I'm rather proud of my baking skills on this day, which just goes to show you that with practice, you can get better and better. Some of these green beans were not the best, so I am picking off the bits and pieces and of course the ends of them just to get what is edible off of them. Some of them had started to really shrivel up and die, but I didn't want to throw it all away because I wanted to utilize what I have been tending and growing all summer months and get the best of my harvest. I'm using bacon grease here. I've actually been leaning a lot more into using bacon grease, especially for dinner and savory items like this, because not only do I love the flavor of it, but it is just making our dollar stretch that much more. Even if we're not buying the good quality bacon anymore, I'm still not willing to just throw it out. I still want to utilize every bit of my money. And I guess it's the same way with the chicken bones because I'm not always buying organic chicken these days. Everything is just so expensive for us, and we are a one income family. So I need to not be so picky, and I will even save Costco chicken, rotisserie chicken, specifically bones, and I know how they are kept and what's done. The peppers are, of course, from my garden as well. So again, just trying to utilize everything that we have. This tri-tip on my first round was not done completely. I mean, I would eat it, but my family does not like any kind of rawness to their meat. So I had to put it back in, but it did come out fine. And you can see that the bread came out absolutely wonderful. I wish that I would have greased my cast iron skillet just a tad more than what the normal seasoning is, because I did end up having to cut it in half to even attempt to get it out. It was stuck underneath. But in the end, it worked out. It's just not as pretty or Pinterest worthy as I would have hoped, especially since I'm putting this up here on the interwebs for everybody to see. But again, work with what you have. I had forgotten to show you what a plate looked like, so I made one real quick, and this is what we all ate on that day. So after dinner and the cleanup has been done, I decided that I wanted to have some kind of snack food for my children. And like I had mentioned, tomorrow would going to be one of our busiest days of the week. So I kind of wanted to set myself up for success and have something that was versatile for breakfast. So on this day, I decided to make some muffins. I am using the poppy seed lemon muffin recipe that Lisa has in her daily sourdough book, but I am changing it to be using millet instead of poppy seeds. My kids really like the crunch of the millet, and they're not always a fan of the poppy seeds. My toddler sometimes thinks that they are bugs. Next time I make this, I don't think that I will be adding the baking powder into it right away like I did. I should have let it sit and absorb the liquid because it is the fresh ground flour, but they did come out well. They just came out quite airy and bubbly, a little bit more than I had anticipated. And it did make me almost 3 dozen by doubling the recipe instead of just 2 dozen, which is very helpful because here we are. I am voice recording this on Wednesday and I still have several muffins left. I am actually really surprised. And as you can see, my oven still does not cook evenly. Facebook Marketplace is always showing me lovely old ovens that I wish would fit in this tiny little area, but I digress. One day I pray that I will actually have one of those old cast iron style ovens. Until then, I will keep going on this one until I kill this oven like I did the last one. Since these were only in the fridge for a few hours, they are not that cold and they did not really firm up that much. I should not have taken out that first loaf of bread from the Banneton right away because it did start to deflate and spread out. It did still puff up really nicely in my Dutch ovens, but that is just a little tip that if you are doing it a same day, just to kind of expect to do it really fast and get it into the Dutch oven so that you can try and keep its shape better. For my home, I generally cook these for 35 minutes with the lid on and then about 15 minutes with the lid off. And I find that that is the perfect amount of time for my sourdough. As you can see, it's getting dark outside and my lighting has changed, so I apologize for the yellow hue, but that is what I am with right now. If you enjoy seeing how we make homemade living work in the middle of real busy family life, I'd love to have you stick around. Subscribe for more homemaking, from scratch cooking, gardening, food preservation, and practical ways we save money along the way. And if you're working on building up your own pantry and making your grocery budget stretch a little further, check out my Padding Your Pantry playlist next. There are plenty of ideas in there for making the most of what you already have. Bye, friends.